It started with a salad he was proud of. Theo had picked the greens that afternoon from his own backyard garden. He rinsed them under the tap, the way he always did, and ate them standing at the kitchen counter. Healthy, homegrown, the opposite of dangerous. 2 weeks later, he was lying in an emergency room with the worst headache of his life, telling a doctor he could feel something crawling under the skin of his arm. The doctor said it was a migraine and sent him home. It was not a migraine. Something had left his gut, slipped into his blood, and was now moving through the lining of his brain. By the end of this, a doctor would push a needle into his spine, look at the fluid, and find the unmistakable calling card of a parasite in the human brain. And the thing that put it there was not exotic. It was a slug. A slug he never saw, on a leaf he barely rinsed, in a salad anyone would have called the healthy choice. So hold on to that before we start. Theo didn't travel anywhere strange. He didn't eat anything weird. He ate a salad from his own garden, the kind of thing we're all told to eat more of. Here is exactly how that ordinary bowl of greens ends with a worm in a person's brain, and the one test that finally caught it. Theo was 28, and the garden was his thing. A few raised beds behind the house, tomatoes in summer, greens almost year-round. He liked the idea of eating something he'd grown himself, picked the same day, straight from the soil to the bowl. He was not careless. He rinsed everything. But he rinsed it the way most people do. A quick pass under the cold tap, a shake, into the bowl. Good enough. Nobody scrubs a lettuce leaf like a surgeon. That night, his partner skipped the garden greens and ate the bagged kind from the store, the triple wash stuff in the plastic clamshell. No reason. She just grabbed the bowl that was closer. That small, meaningless choice is the only thing that separated the two of them in what came next. Because somewhere on the leaves Theo picked, there had been a slug. Maybe it was still there and he ate it without noticing. Maybe it had only crawled across the leaf hours earlier and left a trail of slime behind. He would never know which. What matters is that slugs and snails can carry the larvae of a particular worm, and that those larvae are microscopic, far too small to see, or taste, or feel. He finished the salad. He felt completely fine. He went to bed, and inside him, the larvae were already moving. For about 2 weeks, nothing. This is the part that makes it so hard to trace. The thing that's going to nearly kill you happened a fortnight ago, at a dinner you've half forgotten. Then the headache started. Not a normal headache. Theo had had hangovers, dehydration headaches, the dull pressure of a long day staring at a screen. This was something else. It built and built until it felt like his skull was too small for what was inside it. Light hurt. Sound hurt. Turning his head sent a bolt of pain down the back of his neck, and the neck itself was going stiff, like the muscles were setting into concrete. And then there were the sensations on his skin. He'd be sitting still and feel a patch of his forearm start to tingle and burn, like a limb waking up from being slept on. Except it would move. Crawl. A prickling that drifted from his arm to his shoulder and was gone, then turned up somewhere else an hour later. He kept rubbing at it, checking his skin, finding nothing there. He didn't know it, but that crawling feeling was the most honest symptom he had. Because something actually was crawling. Not on his skin, but in the nerves that fed it. The larvae were on the move, threading through his nervous system, and his body was lighting up everywhere they passed. By the third day, he couldn't take it. His partner drove him to the emergency room. And here is where the trap closes, because on paper, Theo looked like a dozen ordinary things. Bad headache, stiff neck, a little nauseous, no high fever. A young, healthy man who'd been a bit stressed. The crawling skin sensation sounded, frankly, like anxiety. The most likely answer, statistically, was a viral headache or a touch of viral meningitis, the kind that's miserable for a few days, and then your own immune system clears it. There's no special treatment. You go home, you rest, you push fluids, you wait it out. So that's what they told him. Probably viral. Maybe a migraine with some anxiety on top. Here's something for the pain. Follow up with your doctor if it doesn't settle. Nobody asked him what he'd eaten 2 weeks ago. Why would they? Nothing about a headache points back to a salad. Theo went home, and he got worse. The headache stopped responding to anything. He started vomiting from the sheer pressure of it. The light sensitivity got so bad, he lay in a dark room with a pillow over his face, and the crawling, burning sensations spread until parts of his body felt wrong in a way he couldn't even describe to the people trying to help him. 48 hours after they sent him home, his partner brought him back. And this time, a different doctor was on. The second doctor looked at the stiff neck, the crushing headache, the light sensitivity, and made the call the first visit hadn't. This needs a spinal tap. It's a procedure people dread, and it's exactly the right one. A needle goes into the lower back, into the space around the spinal cord, and draws off a small amount of cerebrospinal fluid, the clear liquid that bathes the brain and the spine. If something is inflaming the lining of the brain, the evidence is floating in that fluid. They drew it off. And immediately, two things were strange. First, the pressure. The fluid came out fast, under high pressure, which told them the space around Theo's brain was inflamed and overfull. That alone explained the unbearable headache. Second, and this was the one that cracked the case, when the lab looked at the cells in that fluid under the microscope, they were the wrong cells. In a normal spinal tap, you find almost no cells at all. In a typical infection, you find the usual foot soldiers of the immune system. But Theo's fluid was loaded with a specific, unusual kind of white blood cell. Eosinophils. Eosinophils are specialists. Your body doesn't send them against an ordinary virus or most bacteria. It builds them in large numbers for one main job, attacking large, multicellular parasites, worms. And eosinophils have no business being in the fluid around a human brain. Finding them there is one of the loudest signals in medicine. It even has a name, eosinophilic meningitis, and it means, more often than not, that something parasitic is loose in the central nervous system. The doctor reading that result didn't think migraine. She thought, there's a worm in this man's brain. The only questions left were which one, and how it got there. So she went back to Theo and asked the question the first visit never did. Not where does it hurt? She asked what he'd eaten, whether he'd traveled, whether he kept a garden, ate snails, handled slugs, whether anything raw or unwashed had been on his plate in the last couple of weeks. It sounds almost random when you're lying in a hospital bed with your head splitting open. What does a salad have to do with this? But that question is the whole diagnosis. The worm she was thinking of has a name and a very specific story. Angiostrongylus cantonensis, the rat lungworm. And it leaves a trail you can only follow if you know to ask about food. When Theo described the garden, the just-picked greens, the quick rinse, the picture locked into place. This was the most common cause of eosinophilic meningitis on Earth, and he had handed it the most common doorway: raw produce that a slug had been on. To confirm it, his spinal fluid could be sent for specialized testing, the kind of parasite DNA test that public health labs can run on cerebrospinal fluid to name the exact culprit. But the diagnosis was really made the moment three things lined up: the syndrome, the eosinophils in the fluid, and a history of unwashed greens. That triad is the answer. Miss any one of them, especially the question about food, and a man with a worm in his brain gets sent home as a migraine. Again. So how does a worm from a rat end up in a gardener's skull. Start with the name. It's called the rat lungworm because that's where it's supposed to live, in the arteries of a rat's lungs. That's its home. The adults live in the rat, lay eggs, and the young larvae get coughed up, swallowed, and passed out in the rat's droppings. Then a snail or a slug comes along and eats those droppings. Inside the snail, the larvae grow up one stage and become the infective form. Now the snail is loaded, and when a rat eats that snail, the worm is back home, and the whole loop closes. Rat to slug to rat. That's the entire life this parasite is built for. It has nothing to do with us. We break into the cycle by accident. When a human swallows that infective larva in an undercooked snail, in a freshwater prawn or a crab that ate a snail, or, most ordinarily, on a leaf of unwashed lettuce a slug crawled across, the worm finds itself in completely the wrong animal. And here's the cruel part. The larva doesn't know it's in the wrong place. It does what it's programmed to do. It burrows out of the gut, slips into the bloodstream, and goes looking for the place it's supposed to mature. In a rat, that journey runs through the brain on the way to the lungs. So the larva heads, by instinct, straight for the central nervous system. In a human, it gets there, and then it's lost. It can't finish the journey, it can't grow up, it can't get back out, so it wanders through the brain and the spinal cord, a microscopic invader nosing through the most delicate tissue in the body, and eventually it dies there. That's the moment the real damage is done. A foreign body breaking apart inside the lining of your brain and an immune system throwing everything it has at it. The eosinophils swarm, the tissue swells, the pressure climbs. The worm was never trying to hurt you. It was just trying to get home, in the one body where home doesn't exist, and your brain happened to be on the route. Now you'd think the treatment is obvious. There's a worm. Kill the worm. It is not that simple, and this is the part that surprises people. The worm in Theo's brain was already dying on its own, and the dying was the problem. If doctors hit it with a strong worm-killing drug and killed off a whole load of larvae at once, all of them breaking apart inside the brain at the same time, the immune storm could get dramatically worse. You can make the patient sicker by winning the fight too fast. So the real treatment is more patient and a little strange. You calm the storm instead of charging it. High doses of steroids to bring the inflammation down, and there's good evidence that a course of steroids shortens how long and how badly people suffer. Strong pain control, and to deal with that dangerous pressure inside the skull, doctors sometimes go back in with the spinal needle again and again, draining off fluid to bring the pressure down. Each tap is grim, but each one eases a headache that nothing else can touch. Worm-killing drugs are used carefully, if at all, and usually only alongside the steroids. For Theo, it was a long, ugly few weeks. The headaches came in waves. There were more spinal taps than he wanted to count, but he was young, otherwise healthy, and he'd swallowed, by luck, a small dose, and that matters more than almost anything else with this disease. Most otherwise healthy people who get it do recover, slowly, over weeks to months. He got that ending. Not everyone does. The severity tracks how many larvae you took in, and people who've swallowed a heavy dose, sometimes from eating snails or slugs on a dare, sometimes raw by tradition, have ended up with lasting nerve damage, paralysis, or worse. Theo walked out of it. He also never ate an unwashed thing again in his life, and that's the takeaway, because this one is genuinely preventable. The rat lungworm is no longer just a tropical curiosity. It's turned up as a cause of human meningitis in at least 30 countries. It's established in Hawaii, and it's spreading through the southeastern United States as its snails and slugs move with the warming climate. You don't have to live in the jungle to meet it. You just have to eat a salad. So wash your produce and actually inspect it. Go leaf by leaf for the greens you didn't buy sealed, because a quick rinse does not reliably wash a slug or its slime off a crinkled lettuce leaf. Cook snails, slugs, freshwater prawns, crabs, and frogs all the way through. Never eat them raw, and never on a dare. Wash your hands after the garden. And if you've got small kids, watch what they put in their mouths outside, because a toddler with a slug is a real way this happens. And here is the sentence that could save someone you love. If you, or anyone around you, ever gets the worst headache of their life with a stiff neck and that strange, crawling, burning feeling on the skin, and especially if there's been a garden, a snail, or raw greens anywhere in the last couple of weeks, say these words to the doctor. Ask them to check the spinal fluid for eosinophils and to rule out the rat lungworm. Because the answer to this one isn't on a brain scan. It's floating in the fluid around the brain, and only if someone thinks to look. The slug never meant any of it. It was just doing what slugs do, carrying a passenger it didn't ask for across a leaf, in a garden, in a salad. Healthy, homegrown. The opposite of dangerous. Wash your greens.